off and then dipped again, of course, in the recession that we've been in. The purple bars there show moody'seconomy.com projections for the growth of the Northeast Ohio economy going out to 2019. And we do hope they're right. Now, if you look at the percentages, those are not particularly heroic numbers. I mean, look at that recovery compared to the numbers that were going on there in the 1990s. So this is not a particularly robust projection, but having come out of a 10-year period where we went virtually nowhere, having an extended period of 2 or 3% growth would probably feel pretty good here. And in fact, I think I've got a slide in here to show you what this means for employment, and if not, I'll tell you about it. Most people here have not believed that line has actually kind of been upward sloping. Despite the challenges in the economy here, we generally have at least been gradually growing, not declining. And if Moody's is right, we're about to enter a period of at least modest growth, and that would be, of course, very welcome. So you may wonder, so how did that even happen? In fact, if you go back here, and I'm sorry I have to go on both sides of the room, back here at the beginning, there in 1992, we had an economy of about 142 or so, the low 140s, billion dollars. And even in the depths of the recession, we had an economy of $175 billion. So what the heck grew during that period of time? And so our researchers on our staff started breaking that down, and we divided the GRP into different sectors. And this is from 1992 to 2011 in terms of output. And this is output. And look at the one at the top. Now, be honest with yourself. Maybe you haven't actually even thought about this very much. But if I'd asked you before I showed the slide whether manufacturing output in Northeast Ohio was higher or lower than it was 20 years before, how many of you would have said it was sort of flat to up? Would any of you have said that? So you've seen one of my presentations before. The only one. He studies the matter, so he knows that. Most people think manufacturing output in this region has gone way down, and that's because we have this thing where we think head count of people employed equals output, and all we read about all the time are the number of jobs that are eliminated at a Ford assembly plant or something like that, where what we've actually had is a massive improvement in productivity. And the reason why we still have, $30 billion, let's say, of output from manufacturing is because the base we have today has gotten a hell of a lot more productive and more competitive, and that's why we still have it. And so if you want to get into a debate about policy and the importance of manufacturing, the number of people there, how many, you probably don't think about this stuff anymore, but how much of our population nationally, you suppose, works on farms? 2%? We got a ringer in the room here. So about 2%. And if we went back 75 years or so, what do you suppose it would be? A third, I don't know, some big number. And the last I checked, we have an obesity crisis. But we have very few people working on farms, but we're still producing a lot of food. But when manufacturing employment goes down, we jump to the conclusion that we don't make anything here anymore. Total garbage. Absolute total baloney. Yet I would bet you would agree with me that that's generally what you hear out there, right? That's kind of the buzz. Oh, we don't make anything, The United States manufacturing output has never been higher than it is today. The United States manufacturing output is the same share of the world manufacturing output today as it was about 15, 20 years ago. Manufacturing ain't going away. excuse me, oh my gosh. It's a huge opportunity. And here, we have at least held our own. The national numbers are up a lot more. So we have lost share of US manufacturing in Northeast Ohio, but at least we've held our own from an absolute standpoint. And I'm not going to talk about it, but look at the other big percentages on here. If you want to know the simple reason why our economy is performing more like the US, is look at the growth rates that have happened in these other areas on here as our economy here is diversified. That's why we're performing better, because we have become much more of a diverse economy and more of a technologically driven economy here in Northeast Ohio. We're making things because we're smart, not just making things because we're strong. And that is the source of prosperity for the long term. So if we look to the future, now we pivot here, and this is all moody'seconomy.com data, taking the exact same sectors and going out from 2011 to 2019, and look at the one at the top. Manufacturing, up, output projected to be up 28%. I have a companion chart that shows headcount, and the manufacturing headcount is expected to be about the same, grow a little bit. That would be real progress, though, because it has been declining. So about stable employment in manufacturing. What that masks is the fact that there's a whole lot of people around my age who, over that period of time, by the time we get to 2019, are definitely going to be retired. Manufacturers are petrified about the challenge they faced in replacing their workforce that they have today, even to keep headcount the same. Terrified, because a lot of young people are not getting trained in the skills that the people who are going to be retiring have had. And it's a big issue. And you can see the various other growth rates. And by the way, that manufacturing, that 28% compares to Moody's projection for the US is about 22 or 23% increase in manufacturing. So not only are they showing an increase for us, they're actually projecting an increase in share of output in manufacturing for Northeast Ohio. If they are right, that will be a big deal, because it will reverse a 30 or 40-year trend of where our share of manufacturing output has been declining, while we've been sort of flat while the U.S. has been growing. Moody's says we're going to grow faster than the U.S. in that area. Terrific news. You can see a variety of others there that are, that are very attractive and decent growth rates. So there is opportunity in here, folks. And by the way, these are industries, obviously. There are financial opportunities in every one of those. This isn't by occupation, this is by, type of business. Yes, so here's my jobs one. Okay, so we're going to be wrapping up here. This is the really interesting dilemma we have. And that is, let's see if I can go back here. Okay, let's go back to this. Okay, so this is the history on GRP. Manufacturing about flat, pretty good numbers across the rest of those things. But the fact is, if I took those same sectors and showed you the US growth rates in those other areas, you'd see higher numbers in many of them. As I mentioned, you would see a much higher number in manufacturing. So our growth rate as a region has not been as strong as the US. Without question, we know that. It's true for the whole Midwest. That isn't just Northeast Ohio. So a lot of us are working very hard. Remember that whole wheel of organizations? A lot of us are working very hard to continue to improve the business mix we have here so we have a higher growth rate economy. More technological, more sophisticated technology, improve the growth rate in Northeast Ohio by improving the mix of business we have here. We're working very hard to do that. The number one ingredient you need to do that is to have the people in order to fuel that growth. So here's the people story. This is the number of people working. This is head count, going back to the same kind of period, going back to 1992. And you can see that that was ramping up. We added, we went from 1,950,000 there in the early 90s to a peak of 2.2 million. So that's, 250,000 jobs during the 90s that we added. And then in that early 2000 recession, we lost a bunch. Manufacturing took a hit, headcount-wise. We leveled off, tried to come back, really didn't gain much, and then we hit the recession again and took another big jump down to about to where we were, in fact, less than we were in the early 90s in terms of the number of people working. In those purple bars, Moody's is projecting from that bottom point an increase in employment of a couple 100,000. It shows exactly on there. Problem is, we only have 170,000 people total looking for work in Northeast Ohio. So according to Moody's, we would have to go to 0 unemployment in order to hit this job projection. I think you all know enough to know that's not practical. That does not happen. There's always turnover. There are people who just don't have the right skills. If you can get unemployment down to 5%, you would be guaranteed re-election as a president. And at 4%, you would start seeing wage inflation because business would be scrambling for people so hard, they'd be bidding up the price, and we would start to have an inflationary spiral as wages started to mount. So even if you take into account the people who have dropped out of the workforce, which may be around 30 or 40,000, that's not enough to close the gap. So if Moody's is right about that projection, and remember the projection was only a couple percentage points a year, right? 2-3% growth, which is nothing. That's spectacular. If they're right about that and we need that many more jobs, we're going to run out of people to fill those jobs. We're going to have to get back in the business of trying to get people to come here. Our companies here, every one of your companies, and I think it's great to see Sherwin-Williams and Westfield was over there. The smart ones are saying, I got to start getting people right now. Because in a couple years, they're going to be really hard to get. And my personal prediction is that over the next 10 years, attraction of people is going to be as big a corporate priority as attraction of customers. That will be revolutionary. That'll be a change. We've always sort of assumed that the people would just show up. That ain't gonna be true anymore. So this is a very interesting picture. What you see in Northeast Ohio is a transforming, painfully slowly transforming economy from one that was built on technologies that were invented in the early 2000s, or early 20th century. Rode that wave, product lines got old. Now we've been going through this transformation from the technologies of the early 20th century to a whole new batch of technologies that are going to fuel the growth going forward. And this region isn't going to go away. The assets that are here, the intellectual capacity that's here, we ain't going away. This is going to be a vital area. And the opportunity for young people in this region is going to be very big. But you got to go find it. I mean, it's still, ain't going to come and just knock at your door. You got to go out and find it. But it's there. It's absolutely going to be there, and it's going to become more so going forward. So tell your friends, this is the place. We need them. We need all the smart ones that we can get here. So that's really the punchline here. According to Moody's, we're going to be back to pre-recession job levels by about 2015, and that will mean an unemployment rate of only 4 to 5%, which may not even be possible in this region, and even lower levels going forward. By the way, none of these projections include what is shaping up to be a massive opportunity in the shale gas drilling for natural gas and related liquids that's going on in the eastern half of the U.S. of Ohio. None of that's even in here. That just makes this challenge even better or worse, depending on how you look at it. So I'm out preaching that skill growth is going to drive our economy here in this region. It's going to be the number one thing. It's going to determine how fast this region can grow. It's going to be the number of people and the amount of skills that we have. Yeah, that's great. So you are now certified, in addition to being certified financial types, you are certified in the knowledge of Northeast Ohio. And you are hereby required, whenever you meet people from outside this region, if they say something negative, you now have more things than you can imagine to counter that with, right? Or even just somebody here is a bad mouth, something like that. Well, tell them, did you realize the manufacturing output actually was sustained over 20 years during the, and that we're manufacturing output is supposed to outpace the United States for the next 7 or 8 years. Make sure you just stand up for the region, because you're standing up for yourself. Spread the word. If you're interested in learning more about what's going on, go to the clevelandplus.com website. There's even a newsletter on there called Pass the Plus. It's what we call it when somebody's given the good word to somebody else. We call it passing the plus. And get the word out there. And finally, I always like to wrap up remembering, even though I throw out a lot of numbers and statistics in this, it's really all about Aaron and Jim and Joyce and all their friends. Every one of those statistics is a real person, and each of these people have a job because of a new company that's here today. And at Team NEO, that's really what motivates us more than anything else, is providing that opportunity for people. So appreciate your interest, and wish you all the very, very best in your own futures and capturing the opportunities that are out there. And as long as James will allow me, I will be glad to take your questions or comments. Was this interesting? Was this different than you thought? Yeah, John.
Well, I was actually going to ask you about Shell Gas, and you mentioned it right near the end, but
yeah.
I think it was in Pennsylvania. They had a Royal Dutch that decided to put a plant there, 20,000 jobs supposedly.
Yeah, the ethylene cracker that, yes.
Are there other opportunities like that?
Well, first of all, I'm trying to remember, because I think I got quoted somewhere on this, probably in the Plain Dealer story. The product that an ethylene cracker is something that almost looks like an oil refinery. It's of that size. And it takes in the natural gas and the associated liquids that we're drilling for and turns it into the chemicals that eventually turn into plastics and a lot of other specialty chemicals that we have a lot, that we use a lot here. We're a big plastic processing region. Those products today are generally made in the Gulf Coast. The fact that there's a plant being built 20 miles into Pennsylvania is a tremendous asset for the plastics companies in Ohio. It's only 20 miles into Pennsylvania. I mean, come on. Who knows the difference? The state of Ohio cares because it's who collects the taxes on the workers, right? But from the standpoint of the business, it doesn't matter whether something's in Canton or Alliance, right? And that's essentially the difference we're talking about being just barely into Pennsylvania. So it's going to be a huge asset for this region. Sure, we would love to have had it on this side of the border, but there's talk of maybe another one of those, but that Shell plant is not even going to get under construction for probably another 2 years. They've picked their likely site, but it's going to take some time. But over the last month, there's been almost every week a $500 million or billion dollar investment being announced associated with the gas play. Whether it's a big staging area, service area in Massillon. It's being talked about in just south of Youngstown. Another company is going to put in place a big pipeline network and a gas fractionization plant that collects the gas and divides it into different constituents. Things are coming. And this will probably, this should be a play that goes on for a couple of decades. Chesapeake Energy is the biggest operator, maybe you've seen their name, has already handed checks to property owners for drilling rights, just mineral rights, not buying their land, just the rights to drill. They've already handed out checks totaling over $2 billion to property owners in eastern Ohio. So I'm sorry, you just shouldn't have been here downtown. You should have been, about 75 miles south of here just buying farmland. So it's, you just pick your choices. So this is going to be a big deal. And it's not even in these numbers anywhere because nobody knows quite how to model it and how to project it.
I guess the second part of that is longer term. You talk about manufacturing renaissance going on here, which I hear a lot about. And labor costs are pretty low, or have held pretty steady over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. But longer term, wouldn't that give us a competitive advantage because we'll have lower energy costs?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things that come from this. Yes, there are. Look, this. I forget the statistic. There are already today, Ohio, I think, ranks third nationally in the number of existing gas wells. And this goes back 100 years. I mean, I hope you all do know that the Standard Oil Company, John D. Rockefeller, started in Cleveland. And that's because the oil fields in western Pennsylvania in particular, and this area. The reason why this field is going on, this thing that's going on right now, is because all this gas and oil was sitting down there about 2 miles underground. And the reason why 100 years ago they were punching a lot of holes is because it was seeping up to the surface. And you could just drill down, whatever, several hundred feet or whatever, and you had a gas well. And that's what the industry was all about for years. It was about finding the places that the stuff that was way down had sort of migrated to the surface, and you went around punching these holes, trying to find where it was. Well, now the technology is there to go all the way down to where the stuff's coming from in the first place. And so we're actually kind of rediscovering the oil that was been here all along. So part of the reason that we had the industrial boom here in the first place is because of the energy that people were finding readily in the area, and this is going to do that again. Because having low-cost energy is obviously a real advantage for a whole lot of different industries, and that's going to be quite beneficial. We've already attracted a couple companies who are going to build machinery here that is going to be used in the fields. We don't work on attracting drillers. They come anyway. They just follow the gas. I don't have to work on them. But we're attracting machinery companies. Yes, ma'am?
I have two-part questions.
Yes.
The first part, you mentioned that productivity is up, but that unemployment is still fairly high.
Yeah.
So knowing that there is a conflict between driving technology that is and skilled and unskilled labor, how does one create an economy that both factors in the increases in technology and the need for jobs for people who would have been doing jobs that technology?
Yeah, the challenge, it's a fabulous question, and that's sort of the age-old question of when technology is changing, how do you help the people that are affected by the technology change? And what's become increasingly harder in society today is that the pace of technology is moving so fast that it's almost outpacing people's ability to retool themselves. There were a lot of people a long time ago who were making, horse carriages, and whips and saddles and so forth, and then this automobile thing came along, and they had to do something. And people were displaced on the farms, and they came in the cities, and they had to learn how to do stuff. And at the time, a lot of the manufacturing didn't require that much skill. You just needed to have a strong back, and we'd put you to work in the plant. Well, that's not possible anymore. It's all tends to be up here. So the pace of change, I'm kind of restating your problem, not giving you an answer. But the problem is the pace of change. The idea of retooling people for new technology has been around for a long time. Problem is ours is moving so fast. part of, it's why you hear a lot in school of trying to teach young people about the need for lifelong learning, because they're going to run into something like that. I'll guarantee you that the skills you guys are all learning as financial people are going to be obsolete in about 10 years. And the software you're going to be using is going to be completely different. And if you don't learn how to use new software, you guys are going to be out of jobs too. You're going to be just like the people that lost the job on the assembly line and have to retool themselves. So it really is a problem, and we're going to need to convince people to reinvest in that. We're going to have to make opportunities available to people. But I personally believe strongly that it's still got to come back to personal motivation. And there's a lot of great colleges out there. There's a lot of great community colleges. And remember when I mentioned about how manufacturers are terribly afraid of not being able to replace people? So in the end, the answer is that skill board. I mean, one of the biggest social dilemmas we have is that we're heading rapidly to a period where businesses can't find people with the skills they need, even for just skilled trades. I'm not talking about going to college, just skilled trades. At the same time, we can't get the city of Cleveland to graduate even 75% of its kids. Kids are dropping out, and why are they dropping out? Somebody has convinced them that they're not opportunity. Where are we mismatching here? So it's got to get back down to individual motivation to go get yourself trained. I personally believe there's plenty of opportunity out there for the people who want to go do it. But we're going to have to make sure that access is there. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Second, yes.
You actually just sort of touched on it. Does TNEO have an initiative to improve education for capital that are already in the area?
We remember the wheel. Remember, we tend to specialize in specific things. One of the area of workforce development, despite the fact that it's the single most important thing that we need to do, wasn't on that wheel. And it's in part because it is such a public sector driven area that frankly the business community has broken a lot of picks and shovels trying to affect that system. It's very traditional, it's very hardwired for special interests, and those aren't evil, it's just people who are in the business of giving people training in many cases that frankly is not commercial. So there's a whole lot of issues in our workforce system, and the business community is trying to figure out again how to try to attack that, to try to make it better, to get this match going better. Believe it or not, the traditional approach, if you walk into the typical workforce center run by the state of Ohio, a very well-meaning person will assess what your skills are and tell you what training you should go get. The only one of those centers in the state of Ohio that has figured out a couple years ago, they should go talk to the companies and ask what they need and then take the people and deliver them to the companies is the one here in Cuyahoga County. And the money they had for that recently ran out. Because the law says you have to give somebody training. Who benefits from that? The trainers. We're in the business of giving training. Now, whether somebody gets a job out of that, that's the person's problem. It's not their problem. The whole system needs to be turned around to be one where you're, especially in this environment, we got to get in the business of finding out what businesses need and then getting the people to the businesses and let the business train the people. It's where most of it happens anyway. So we're trying to actually, as a network of organizations, try to attack this again. But it's tough because it's very ingrained. There's just a lot of money in the system. It's very, structured, all kinds of federal laws about it. It's a tough one, but we have to tackle it because it's critical. We're going to sink unless we do it. Thank you for asking about that. Yes, sir. Okay. Go ahead. I can talk to people separately afterwards. Go ahead.
Speaking of thinking, what has your organization done to for our enterprise zone some of those cities that we promote?
Yeah, we work very closely with the city economic development departments, and Tracy Nichols here in Cleveland, Bob Bowman in Akron are two of the very best economic development people you'll find anywhere. It's their job to create those zones. When we have a company who's interested in the area and they have an interest in that kind of thing, we make sure we make the connection with with those city departments and provide that connection to them. And the company has to evaluate whether the facility really meets their needs or not. But we've got some very good city economic development people out there in Northeast Ohio that we work with very closely. But it's not our job to promote their zones. We have to be completely neutral about representing everybody in 18 counties. So I have 400 political jurisdictions out there who all want me to promote their place. So we present the opportunities for the company, and then the company sort of sorts out what its priorities are, and then there's kind of a selection process that takes place from that. And if that's it, James, I'll be glad to talk to any of you afterwards. Because I think we've got some food and other stuff over there. Okay? Thank you.
That's it for the programming that we have. Thank you all for coming today. Those that are left, I know it's been a long day for you. I hope you've learned. It looks like we might have a prize to be selected.
Hopefully they haven't left, but do you want to draw the name?
Sure.
It's a resume starter pack and a $15 gift card to Starbucks to keep you awake while you write your resume.
Today's winner is Nick Harvey, if Nick Harvey's still around. And if he's not, we're going to pick somebody else. Josh Intagliata. Strike two.
See, they should have stayed.
Is it Amog?
A mug.
Amog? Is Amog around? Amog's our winner. But again, thank you.